Folks, we have some good news about the fourth stimulus checks that you want to know, so be sure to stay until the end of this video. President Biden signed a short-term government funding bill avoiding one looming crisis as Congress turns its gaze towards two other issues. Now, Biden's signature prevents a shutdown hours before an end of Friday deadline, and the measure, which passed the House and Senate on Thursday, will keep the government running through February 18th.
Again, okay? But the point is that the vast majority of the shelves are filled, and the CEOs of not only the suppliers, but the CEOs of UPS and FedEx, which are on track to deliver more packages than ever, are saying the same thing. So we're heading into holiday season in strong shape. Again, this is about a concerted, focused action.
Now, with the threat of a disruptive funding lapse quashed, lawmakers will move to the next steps in daunting the December to-do list. The Democratic-led Congress will next try to stave off a potential default on U.S. debt and pass Biden's $1.75 trillion Build Back Better Act and approve an annual defense budget bill. Now, Janet Yellen expects the U.S. debt will hit its debt ceiling on December 15th. That's if lawmakers do not raise or suspend the debt limit. Republicans have also said they will not vote to hike the U.S. borrowing limit. And Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell have signaled that they might block Democrats from doing so on their own. And the GOP has argued Democrats need to raise that ceiling alone, as they try to pass their sprawling social spending bill without Republican votes. Janet Yellen has pointed out that Congress would have had to increase the limit, regardless of what legislation Democrats passed this year. Now, raising or suspending the debt ceiling does not authorize new spending. While Democrats try to defuse the risk of a default, they also aim to pass Biden's top domestic priority through the Senate. Chuck Schumer wants to pass the Build Back Better Act, which will invest in child care, household tax credits, and Medicare by Christmas. Schumer awaits word from the Senate parliamentarian about whether the plan complies with the budget process that will allow Democrats to pass it on their own. Schumer will also need to win over Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, who have not yet signed off on the bill. The House passed its version of the plan last month, and the Senate will likely make changes, meaning the House will have to vote for a second time. And the flurry of activity in the Senate does not stop with the sprawling social spending plan. The chamber is also trying to pass the annual National Defense Authorization Act, which sets the spending levels for defense programs. Meanwhile, Biden's signature on the spending bill only delays the threat of a shutdown. Democrats will try to craft full-year appropriations bills that can pass both chambers of Congress before funding runs out on February 18th. The Agriculture Secretary announced a plan to distribute one-time $600 relief payments to the U.S. meat packers and farm workers. The aid comes as part of a $700 million aid program from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Bloomberg also adds that the Biden administration plans to distribute the aid as part of the overall agriculture relief program to mostly benefit farm workers, but to also include the low-income food chain workforce. Now, meat processing plants were some of the hardest hit during the crisis. Workers in the meat industry and meat packing industry were considered essential workers during the early days of the crisis. So the reporters that this is an additional $600 stimulus check in aid, and it will be a reflection of the essential nature of the work they performed during the crisis. And Florida has also approved a bill to send $1,000 bonuses to first responders and educators. Georgia, Michigan, and Tennessee put in place bonus programs for teachers in their states. And that's great news, folks. It looks like that we could receive a stimulus check before the end of the year. Do you believe that President Biden will do all that it takes to send up the fourth stimulus check, everybody? I want to know your thoughts on this. And if you have any more questions about the fourth stimulus check, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And until next time, have a great day.
Of Montana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman, thank you. Secretary Yellen, Chairman Powell, thank you for being here as well. And congratulations, Chairman Powell, on your renomination. I was vocal and out front last August supporting your renomination, and congratulations, you'll have my support. I'd like to start by expressing my concern with the inflation we're seeing in the economy. My concern with the administration and my Democrat colleagues are continuing to plow ahead with, I believe, is a very reckless tax and spending proposal as if inflation did not exist. To go back to where we were here earlier this year, Senator Scott made the comment about elections having consequences. And the consequences are then we have policy outcomes here that have consequences, even though we had nearly $1 trillion of unspent COVID relief dollars coming into 2021. the Democrats marched forward with a $1.9 trillion purely partisan spending package. Some of my colleagues refer to this as cash cannons shooting across this economy. So we created demand by injecting borrowed money into the economy. Now the Democrats are looking at jamming through this some $1.75, $1.8 trillion reckless spending bill. Many believe the true cost of that bill is somewhere between $4 and $5 trillion because they played games with truncating these massive programs to try to get the number under $2 trillion. The real number is probably $4 or $5 trillion. The point is this: injecting all this money in the economy, borrowed money, at the same time constricting the supply side, whether it's through mandates or government shutdowns. We now have really the perfect storm created by the Biden administration for inflation, not to mention the issues of energy. Montanans expect to see a 47% increase in heating costs this winter with higher energy prices. The proposal that the Democrats are trying to ram through at the moment will add at least $300 billion to deficit in the first 2 years and about $748 billion over the first 5 years. And with all due respect, Secretary Yellen, you said it's paid for. I think the CBO has not actually said that, even if you add in the massive tax break they'll be giving to the coastal elites. The Democrats have put in there because their donors scream so loud in places like California and New York. But the bottom line is it's not fully paid for, and the CBO has stated that. Also giving the IRS $80 billion to hire 87,000 more agents should be chilling to the American people. This is a massive expansion of government. It's funded in part through more than $400 billion in additional taxes on small businesses that I believe will only exacerbate the inflation fire. It's why so many Montanans and Americans are experiencing these inflation harms every day. Chairman Powell, core PCE and CPI readings, two main indicators for inflation, jumped to 30-year highs of 4.1% and 6.2%, respectively. Needless to say, we are seeing much higher inflation rates than the Fed projected, but yet the Feds continue to predict that inflation is going to come down in the near future. I think many of us here several months ago were very concerned about inflation, probably had a different view of where the inflation forecast was going than the Fed did at that time. But given that inflation has consistently run hotter this year than the Fed has projected, what in hindsight would you say the Fed underestimated in its previous forecasts? And second, what economic factors have changed to give you confidence in your projection that inflation will come down in the near term?
So I'd love to be able to blame our